Good evening, everybody. Keith Engle from TGI Sports Talk's College Sports Huddle. How are you all doing tonight? March Madness has concluded. We'll look back at the Final Four and the final. Connecticut just dominates everybody. Although Monday night's game turned it a little bit closer than the final score indicated, but it's over now. We had four surprising teams. Let's cut off this music. Four surprising teams in Miami and Connecticut, Florida Atlantic, and San Diego State. Sorry, trying to get my head about me here. And you know what? The Final Four, the games were interesting. Connecticut really, they didn't lose a game by They didn't win a game by less than 13 the entire way. San Diego State tried valiantly to stay in this game Monday night, but they just didn't have enough horsepower. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the women's Final Four or the final anyway, and certainly the controversy that went on there, and whether it's warranted or unwarranted. A lot of people with a lot to say. I got my piece to say about it as well. We'll talk some other college basketball news. We'll take a look at some of the coaching moves this recent week. We'll talk at some college football news as well. And then we'll maybe look at the college baseball top 25. We'll look at the final rankings as well in college basketball tonight as well. And guys, don't forget, tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern, recorded last weekend, my interview with Chuck Foreman, former Miami Hurricane back in the late 60s, early 70s. Great player with the Minnesota Vikings. We talk about a lot of stuff. His relationship with Bud Grant, his lack of Hall of Fame support, which he's very vocal about, and some other things. It's a very interesting interview, so catch that. And then we'll be recording this week for air next week, our interview with Irving Fryer, former Nebraska star from the college side and number one draft pick of the New England Patriots. Played very well for long while with the Patriots and with the Dolphins and the Eagles. Good evening, Rick. Good to have you with us. First Georgia, then UConn. Only need the Vikings to complete the trifecta. I didn't realize you're a UConn fan, I guess, Rick. Congratulations then to you on your team winning. A lot of the excitement around this Connecticut team here locally. They played here in Albany to some great crowds in the first round of the tournament. And they also had a very high-profile player on their team, Andre Jackson, who's an Albany Academy grad here in upstate New York, and also from our hometown, Amsterdam, New York. Closer for Rick. Rick lived in the town of Amsterdam, went to Perth with myself, but when you lived in Perth, Amsterdam was the city. So a lot of support. I did see a lot of people. One of the people who was instrumental in me getting my start in podcasting, Joe Altieri, is related to Andre Jackson. He was at the game with his son and a lot of their family. He's a nephew of Joe Altieri from Wake Up to the Vibe. So I thought there was going to be some news about Wake Up to the Vibe, but not so far. Anyway, what happened? In the men's side, we'll talk on the women's side too, because there was some interesting stuff there. You know, you can read what you want into these things, I guess. But in the Final Four, UConn beat Miami handily, 72-59. Miami fought valiantly in this game, I thought, but there was just too much. You know, Connecticut's inside-outside game was so good. Their big men are so athletic. And Andre Jackson didn't play a lot in this game. He only played 21, 22 minutes because he was in foul trouble early in the game and missed, a good, at least half of the first half, if not more. Miami played hard and cut this deficit in the second half to maybe, they got inside single digits It seems like to take them forever, and I think similar to what happened Monday night, they just didn't have enough gas left in the tank. So UConn dominates. Sanago goes for 21 points, and 10 rebounds in that game. Really shot well from the 3-point line as well. This kid is going to be an interesting pro in my mind. And good evening to CA. Good to have you with us here tonight. Put your little note up here. Great to have you with us. Good to have you as always. And Miller led Miami again. Didn't play nearly the game that he played the week before against the number 2 seeded. In Texas. My gosh, my mind just won't work tonight. And in the second game, San Diego State comes back and beats a very game Florida Atlantic team. Florida Atlantic, like virtually this whole game. The only time, I think the only time they led in the second half, San Diego State, was at the buzzer. When they went ahead 72-71 on Butler's jump shot. And Florida Atlantic really dominated for great stretches of this game, but they could not put San Diego State away. They dominated on the offensive boards, and for a long time they couldn't put those balls back. But they showed great mettle as they did against Creighton, and they would, by the way, against Connecticut. So they win this game 72-71. Close as you can get. This tournament was full of close games, except for Connecticut games. And even in the Connecticut games, there were moments where a lesser team might have fallen apart here and blown these games because the teams they played fought hard. Miami fought back hard in that semifinal game, as I said. And then Monday night, after falling down by, I want to say 15 points with about, 9 minutes left or something like that, 10 minutes left. I think the biggest deficit they had until the end, when it was 17. The next 4 or 5 minutes, they went crazy. They cut this game to, I want to say 4, but it was at least 6. No more than 6. With about 5 minutes left, it was a game. I think they got it to 4 with about 6 minutes left. But Connecticut went on a run at the end and played very well. And some great balanced scoring and efforts from this team. They got 17 from Sangano, 16 from Hawkins, who had been sick most of the last 2 days. Newton goes for 19, and Jackson only gets 3 points. Andre Jackson, but 6 assists, a couple of steals, 3 rebounds. This kid does a lot of the dirty work. And there's a lot of people who will tell you that he makes this team go. He never has the biggest numbers, but he makes this team go, and he'll be there next year. We'll see whether Sanago, I should say, is going to be there next year. But nothing to be ashamed of. And they only had 6 points off the bench, total of 28, 41, and then some garbage time minutes at the end. But this team showed, this is their 5th national championship, Connecticut, by the way, since like 1999. We have looked at this at the sport of basketball in the NCAAs, that we've got blue blood. Blue blood's always been Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina, Indiana, UCLA. Those 5 schools are really the blue bloods of the sport, if you will. And look at those teams. UCLA won a lot more national championships than the rest of them, but UConn's put themselves in that pantheon of teams. I think they're a blue blood program. They've done it all since 1999, basically, where these other schools have done it over decades. Indiana, great run under Bobby Knight. They had runs earlier in the 50s and 40s. Same with Duke. Great run early on. Then later, they were really nowhere for about 20 years before. Well, not full 20 years, because they had some good teams under Bill Foster. But Coach K actually brought them into into the pantheon of that blue-blooded program, as I say. But I think Connecticut is one of those teams. Nobody's won 5 national championships since 1999. Let me get some comments here. Irving Fryer had an interesting career. We just talked about Irving Fryer. We'll be interviewing him tomorrow for airing next week. He played really well. He early in his career, he was a problem. A lot of these guys get in these. He didn't have his house burned down. That was Andre Rison, I think, is a guy you're thinking. He was dating Lisa Left Eye Lopez, if you remember, if I've got her name right, the rapper. And she burned down his house. I think she's gone. She's not with us anymore. But that's probably who you're thinking of. Irving Fryer, actually, the week of the Super Bowl, was in the news. A Super Bowl against the Bears in '86. He cut his, they had a little bit of a dispute with his wife, ended up cutting his hand badly, which didn't help the team any, obviously, with a kitchen knife. Funny story, and I'm gonna ask Irving about this. We had season tickets for like 10 years in the 80s, 2 Patriot games, and now I'm talking. This isn't college sports, but I'll tell the story anyway. We're listening to the game, and he had a pretty good first half, and didn't come out for the second half. And the guys next to us always had a portable radio they were listening to the game on, and they said Irving Fryer was in an accident. He'd left the stadium at halftime and drove into a ditch outside the stadium on Route 1. So anyway, funny story. Everybody's doing stuff except, what are you doing? Watching Regional Mariners while listening livestock and the Huskies. Enjoy listening as well. Good. Well, we're glad you're with us in any capacity, CA. Anyway, back to the Blue Bloods. What? And I don't want to take anything away from the UCLA great run that they had for almost 2 decades under John Wooden, and they won championships in like 12 out of 15 years. Some great runs of multiple, championships in a row. But at that time, remember, if you were out west, you played out west. And there was only 24 teams. Well, probably 16, then 24 teams that got in. So you'd win, 2 games and you're in the Final Four. They'd be playing out west, and there weren't a lot of strong teams out west. They'd have to play Long Beach State or Oregon State or USC or somebody, San Francisco, maybe once in a while. And they have to win 2 of those games to get to the Final Four. So, the road was not nearly as tough for UCLA. And I don't want to take anything away from them. They were great teams. But when you look at remarkable runs, UConn, mostly under Jim Calhoun, Ollie, their former coach, they won as a 7 seed, I think, when he was the coach. They usually ran most of their runs under Jim Calhoun. They won kind of as a front runner because they were 1 or 2 seeds. One year they might have been a 4. But under Ollie, I think they were a 7. But then things went awry. When the Big East folded, Connecticut decided it wanted to be a football school, they kind of screwed their basketball program for quite a while. They were kind of a nomad. I think they might have played a season as independent. They played in the American Conference for several years. In fact, I think they won their national championship as part of the AAC. And then they found their way back to the Big East, the new Big East, if you will. And I think it's been a great boon for the school and for the Big East itself. Danny Hurley's done a great job here. I'm going to talk about Danny Hurley. I'll be on Robert Butler at 8:30. We're going to talk a lot about the Patriots saga that's going on right now. And we're going to talk about UConn. We're going to talk about Danny Hurley. Danny Hurley's done a great job here. Danny Hurley had no intentions of being a college basketball coach. He was content to be a high school basketball coach like his dad. His dad was a high school basketball coach in New York City or I think it was New York City. It might be New Jersey. I could be wrong. St. Anthony's for decades till they closed the school. But then Wagner called. He thought he'd give it a try. He did a really good job at a place nobody wins. Got a chance to go to Rhode Island. Did really well there. That got them to NCAA tournaments. And Connecticut called. And it took a few years to get this thing right and to start winning games in the tournament. But Danny Hurley did this the right way. And Connecticut now is back on the map. And Connecticut, Rick, if you're a big Connecticut fan, I mean, listen, this team now, to me, you put in the same paragraph with the rest of the Blue Bloods in this sport. As I said, it's always been Connecticut, Indiana, Duke, North Carolina, UCLA. There's been other guys that have knocked on the door. Michigan State's tried to get there. Hasn't quite really got over the top, right? Who are some of the other schools that you might think of? Georgetown, for a time was there, but not, didn't happen. Some other Big Ten schools, some Southwest Conference or Southeast Conference schools. Nobody has done what these 5 schools have done. Now UConn's done it. Who else has won even come close to 5 championships since 1999? Duke's probably the closest, I would think, and they probably only got 2 or 3 since 99, which is pretty good. Great effort. Here's our baseball update. We'll get into all that on Sunday. The baseball stuff. We'll talk some college baseball tonight too, CA. I'll go through the college top 25 and catch up on some news, later on in the show. Villanova is another team that was heading there. It's a good point. That's one of the other teams I was trying to kind of get in my head, and I couldn't get there. When you look at the teams Raleigh Massimino had, they were always competitive. They won an unexpected national championship against Georgetown in '85. But Jay Wright had a great run there, and if he'd stayed, maybe that would have happened. But I think you have to do it over a period of time too, right? Not 5-10 years. You've got to do it over a couple of decades at least. And I think Villanova was a good choice, though, Rick, is somebody knocking on the door. Got a ways to go. I think UConn's there now. I really do. People may not agree. Who are some of the other schools, though? Who are some of the other schools that might be, knocking on that door, as we were just talking about? Villanova is a great, great choice, Rick, by the way. I was trying to find, I had a article that talked a little about this. I can't remember who they were talking about, but I think I named most of the teams that have been really close. But I think, you go back and look at some of the, you want to see some classic, if you like sports, guys who are unapologetic, and I think Danny Hurley's like this. I think he's like Jim Calhoun in a lot of ways. Not every way, of course, but watch some of Jim Calhoun's press conferences, and they're legendary. There's one where there's a reporter that's asking him about being the highest paid employee in the state of Connecticut. And the way he rips this guy to shreds is just awesome. Absolutely awesome. Spring football game is sold out at Colorado. Over 45,000 tickets sold. I was watching a video of Dion doing some with some guys working out, doing some spring early spring drills and whatnot. And I don't know if he'll do this on the sidelines, but he's wearing a big old cowboy hat. So Dion likes to take on a persona. And I wouldn't doubt you may see him with the old Bum Phillips cowboy hat on the sideline. Dion, listen, I do not think he's going to turn his program around in 1 year. But I'll be the first to admit, when he went to Jackson State, I thought it was a publicity stunt. I didn't think that he was going to be a really good coach, and he is. I've watched some of the behind the scenes stuff from Jackson State and the way he dealt with kids in the locker room and meetings, kids who were disrespectful, and And Deion holds guys accountable. There's two people, right? There's Prime, and then there's Deion Sanders, the coach. There's a little bit of Prime in Deion Sanders, the coach, but the guy's not a joke. He can coach. He won't turn that team around right away, but at least they'll probably be competitive and they'll probably be fun to watch. So it should be interesting. But I want to talk a little bit. So anyway, congratulations to Connecticut. Congratulations to Andre Jackson from Amsterdam, New York. It was interesting to see that, Rick, as you watched the introductions, wasn't it? And I was probably the only. It's probably blasphemous for me to say this. I was rooting for San Diego State Monday night. They had nothing to be ashamed of. They played hard. It's a bigger team. It's a better team. But when the introductions were made and you heard Andre Jackson from Amsterdam, New York, it was very, very fun to hear that when you know somebody from someplace so close to where you grew up. So it was interesting that in that regard. On the women's side, and we'll talk a little bit about this and anything you want to chat about, but I'll give you the scores first, obviously. We talked about this on Sunday. The semifinals were LSU, the number 3 seed, beat number 1 Virginia Tech 79-72. Iowa and Caitlin Clark. I got her. Is that her name? Yeah, Caitlin Clark with a phenomenal performance. Beat number 1 South Carolina, undefeated at the time. 77-73. And in the final, where did my final go? What the hell day was that played? Oh, Sunday afternoon. LSU wins big, 102-85. Some interesting stuff went on here. Caitlin Clark gets a technical for throwing the ball, just throwing the ball backwards behind her. I thought that was a little, she didn't need to do that, but I thought the technical was uncalled for. And also, the hell's her name now? God, isn't that terrible? My mind just won't work right. Angela Reese. Again, she's getting a lot of heat for giving the same signal. So I'm not sure I understand this. Caitlin Clark, and I'm not sticking up for Angela Reese, and she took it along. She carried it on probably longer than she had to. But Caitlin Clark had been doing this little, you can't see me thing to opponents through this tournament and had been getting more pronounced. And she'd gotten herself a little more cocky. She's a great player and I'm sure a fine person. But when Angela Reese does it to her in the final, people are up in arms. And by the way, the officiating was just atrocious in this game. Atrocious. But it just feels like, and Rick, I know you're certainly one to speak your mind on these issues, and there's a lot of trash talking that goes on. There's trash talking, and then there's taunting, and there's even beyond that. And maybe I didn't see this in the same light, but knowing the history of Caitlin Clark, who did the same kind of thing, and it gotten a little bit. Listen, she's a great player, but she certainly wasn't shy about her own confidence, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with the way she carries herself. But when LSU puts it to you, and then Reese kind of gives the same sign, and she did point at her ring finger as well, which again is an extra level of taunting. So I'm curious whether as this again, I think the knee-jerk reaction is people did not know the history of Caitlin Clark, and that move, was hers. So again, I'm kind of torn on this whole thing about whether it's big or not. Yes, Ed White was a football coach at San Diego State. He played in the Pac-12 at California, went to the pros, as Rick knows, and played with Minnesota. Later played at San Diego and coached at San Diego State. And if you follow Ed White, which I think you do, Rick, on Facebook, you saw that he was a huge supporter of these Aztecs throughout this tournament. And it was fun to see Ed. And Ed seems to be doing pretty well. I sent him a message the other day, private message, letting him know that, I'd interviewed, I'm wishing him luck on the game Monday night, and also let him know that I interviewed Chuck Foreman and how much Chuck Foreman spoke, how well Chuck Foreman spoke of Ed White, and how much credit he gave him for a lot of his success in the NFL. And Ed was very appreciative to hear that. And it seems he's still hanging in there, as he has some struggles, but he's doing, it seems to be doing pretty well. So anyway, even Caitlin Clark, by the way, getting back to this whole thing, I think she said that she doesn't think that Angela Reese deserved the criticism that she was getting for her actions during that game, and also did not want to be invited to the White House. And she, kudos to her. The White House is for winners, and she said that. She said it's for LSU. It's not for us. So anyway, again, to me, I think it was a knee-jerk reaction, and it didn't. This was an ugly game. The officiating was ugly. Some of the coaching, I want to say Coach Malarkey, because that's what she seems like at LSU. Her first, I don't think that's how you say her name, but my God, I mean, Chris Sager is probably rolling over in his grave. If you remember Chris Sager from TNT, TBS, the basketball games, and some of the outfits he would have on. Oh my God, she looked like a clown. And she's pushing referees around, bullying referees, and the refereeing made this a farce. And I think because of all the other histrionics that were going on during this game and marring what should have been a great game, I think it kind of blew this thing out of proportion. That's just my take. We'll see whether that's true or not. Dan Harris with us. Thank you, Dan, for the kind words. Also, Step ESPN, it's been a week in college basketball. It has been a week in college basketball, man. There's been a month worth of news in about a week. The showboat coach for LSU was on the court and came on to, yes, she actually pushed a referee. And again, they probably should have been pushed. These guys were terrible. Let's not sugarcoat the fact that, they were, this isn't why Iowa lost the game. Let's be clear. LSU was better. But they certainly didn't get any, they certainly weren't hurt. I think there were bad calls on both sides of this, as I watched it. I didn't watch the entire 40 minutes of this game, but I watched as much as I could. And these guys were just bad, historically bad. These guys should all be fired. And I do agree that the LSU coach, he's a clown, number one. Who dresses like that? I mean, if you don't, hey, look at me. There's no reason for that, and anyway, what you say, the rest were horrible, and we're obviously part of the new world. It is, it's like, hey, look at me. And so were the referees. They were in the same kind of mode, and everybody's like that. And to be quite frankly, I mean, for Frank, as this tournament went on, I saw a little more of that out of Caitlin Clark as I watched it. So, again, these kids, they get bad raps. Padres fans at the ballpark were upset because they switched the lineups of the game for the game off for the basketball game. They switched the lineups for the game off the basketball game. I'm not sure. I'm not sure the context there, but I will tell you, San Diego State, I think, packed their home court in San Diego, California for this game. What do you got, Dan? Over here in the UK, if you touch the referee, it's an 8 to 10 game ban. And if you push 20 games or 180 days. That's probably what it ought to be, Dan. You shouldn't be putting your hands on anybody, right? Especially referees, no matter how bad they are. I did say they deserve to be pushed down. That's a wrong thing for me to say. I'm not here to encourage violence against referees. These guys were horrible. And what the hell is her name? Kim, crap. Coach Mulkey. I can't remember her first name. But Jesus. I mean, this is she's taking, hey, look at me to a whole new freaking level. It's hard to get excited. I want to be happy for champions. I'm happy with UConn. They played good basketball, good sportsmanship was shown throughout. Why can't? And now the women they're going to trying to take the mantle away from the men. Hey, Dan, keep the interviews coming for Keith. He's the best and bring out the best in the person he's interviewing. I appreciate that, Rick. I really do. Your kind words are always welcome and with gratitude. And Dan's done a good job chasing these guys down that I was chasing for a long time. He's got a way to engage with these guys. And I've got to get him a fresh list, too, because I know the one he's got it's probably getting a little stale. The guys we haven't gotten on that list, we're probably not going to get, at least not right away. So we gotta refill the pipeline, if you will. Kim, thank you, Kim Mulkey. She's a great college basketball coach. She has been for a long time. She won national championships at Baylor. She doesn't need to be out there acting like a clown, dressing like a clown. I mean, the women's side, we talked about this, and I got myself in trouble, and I'll get myself in trouble now again, I'm sure. On a couple Saturday or Sunday shows, I got myself in trouble saying the women just aren't as good as the men. They just aren't. If you want to be taken seriously, then don't go out there dressed like freaking, a circus clown. I would say that about a men's coach, too. Not guys. Oh, you're right. My bad. 3 women. That's my fault. Yes, I'm sorry. It's just a bad habit. So 3 women. They should be fired. All of those referees in that game should be fired. They did a horrendous job. And Kim Mulkey did a good job of bullying them. Again, I don't think it was a difference in the game. I really don't. But, it certainly didn't hurt. I never will blame referees. They were bad. But you can't let that affect your performance. And it did in this game. Right? I mean, I don't think there's any question that, I was probably affected by the refereeing here, but they didn't play their best game. That's all. They gave up 102 points. Caitlin Clark did score 30, but she was only 9 of 22. It's not great shooting. She had 8 assists, a couple of rebounds. So she did a good job, but she got very little help from her team. The bench scores only 8 points. And the difference in this game was LSU's bench scores almost 30. So, anyway. What else is going on in the world of college basketball? By the way, we'll be on at 8:30 if I didn't mention it with Robert Butler. If you guys want to jump on Robert's Sports Scope show, we'll talk some Patriots. We'll talk more college basketball. Congratulations one more time to UConn, and I'll even congratulate LSU, but UConn specifically. Danny Hurley deserves this, I think. Danny Hurley's a good guy. He comes from a very good basketball family, and I think he was raised the right way. I'm sure he had a tough upbringing with his father. There are some really good documentaries on Bob Hurley Sr. And his high school coaching career, and I would recommend anybody watch them. There's 2 or 3 really, really good ones. And I would watch him because I think the way he deals with people and dealt with kids was the way coaches should deal. He wasn't easy with them, but he was fair. And Was very successful, by the way. So anyway, long career and well done. See what else is going on in the world of college basketball. We'll take a look at some of the coaching stuff going on. We'll get to some football news. We'll take a look, see if there is any football news. We'll also jump into the final poll I want to look at, number one. Let's take a look here. Here's the final poll. Obviously, UConn's number one, up 11 spots from the final poll after running wild in the tournament. San Diego State also up 16 spots to number two, running all the way to the final. They finished 32-7. Congratulations to them and their great coach. Miami finishes third after a 29-8 season. They're up 12 spots in this last poll. Alabama drops, obviously, to the fourth spot. It'd be an interesting offseason in Alabama. That's all I'll say there. Florida Atlantic gets up 20 spots to the 5 spot. Great run by them, and congratulations to Coach May. This guy may not be long for Florida Atlantic, although they are heading to the AAC next year, so the competition will get better. If he continues to coach the way he is, then you may see him at Florida Atlantic for a while. Maybe he's building something. Maybe he's building something there that will last. Similar to Central Florida has had some lasting success in basketball football. We'll see if it can last here. South Carolina was their championship he's talking about Iowa in the women's. I agree. They didn't have much left in the tank. That was a great game. They gave it their all. Great tournament. Nothing to be ashamed of. Finishing up with the men, Houston drops all the way to 6 after being ranked first going into the tournament. Texas stays at 7. UCLA drops 2 down to number 8. Kansas State finishes at 9. Gonzaga rounds out the top 10 at number 10, obviously. See, my Perth education has done me wonders, by the way, right? Kansas drops all the way to number 11. Creighton up 10 spots to 12. Purdue down 10 spots rather. Marquette down 10 spots to 13 and 14 respectively. Xavier loses a spot. Tennessee actually moves up 5 spots. Listen, bad end of the season for Tennessee. They played a couple ugly games to get to the Sweet 16, and then they get knocked out. Arizona down 9. Only 1 win in the tournament. I'm sorry, they lost in the first round of the tournament. My bad. Duke down 2. Baylor down 8. Huge disappointments. Arkansas up 5. St. Mary's down 3. Virginia down 13. Indiana down 5. Texas A&M down 5. To me, the biggest disappointments, obviously, Purdue, Virginia, Arizona. One that you may not think about off the top of your head, Memphis. Playing really good basketball for Penny Hardaway coming into this tournament, coming off a win against Houston, albeit without their best player for much of the game. But then they play a stinker in their first round 8-9 game, and I thought that team would go a little ways, and they did not. So, that's how the cookie crumbles here. Now, some of the bad news, we'll get to some of the news here in college basketball. We want to run through this. The downside here, I'm not sure what to make of it. It's probably, part of this is the timing of the game, but this championship game was the least watched championship game in history. I mean, again, it's hard to compare with 30 years ago because, look at, you didn't have the options you had 30 years ago that you have today. You watched one of 3 channels, and if the NCAA championship game was on one of them, you were going to draw a lot of viewers. But now the playing field's pretty level, and this is the lowest ranked final ever as far as viewers go. 14 million people, 14.69 watched. The previous low was 15.99, so quite a drop in 2018 when Villanova, who we talked about recently, beat Michigan on TBS. So, again, the NCAA probably doesn't I like hearing that. Bill Self is doing fine now after his scare. He has no plans to retire. There were some rumors coming out of Lawrence, Kansas, that he may be thinking about stepping away. He says that will not be happening. UConn did return home. A lot of vandalism on campus. You know, kids, when you win championships, you can celebrate without wrecking everything in your path. We don't need to burn cars. We don't need to flip them over. I mean, there's over 7,000 people gathered inside the Gamble Pavilion, Kansas City's home arena, to greet them Tuesday afternoon after a crazy night the night before. So let's start to behave like adults. And by the way, you adults, when you win championships in pro sports, can probably teach the kids something by the way you behave after those victories. So please, let's stop with this nonsense, right? Arizona's Carissa is going to be the top point guard, maybe to transfer this year. He's going to commit to West Virginia. Purdue Zach Edey wins the Wooden Award, which is not unexpected. He had a really good senior season, averaging 22 points, 12 rebounds, and 2 blocks a game, and led Purdue to the Big Ten championship and a #1 seed. But we all know it ended badly as he and his entire team had a bad first round and lost to Fairleigh Dickinson. Again, that's how these smart, experienced teams, they didn't let the inexperienced Purdue guards get the ball inside easily, and they pushed Edey off his spot more than once. You don't have to push these guys far off their spot to really influence the game. I'm not sure what that is, Kenny. Evening, I guess. You missed a couple of letters. It's not important, Kenny. I'll speak. You know, I need Drew. Drew has become my Kenny Gifford translator. So, but good evening, Kenny. It's great to have you with us. That story doesn't do much for me. Alabama player, which we said it's going to be an interesting winter in Alabama. Darius Miles pleads not guilty in his shooting case. As you know, he's charged with first-degree murder. And we'll see whether his teammate, we don't know what's going to happen with Miller, who supposedly, without his knowledge, delivered the gun. Well, I don't know how you don't know you're carrying a gun, but that's okay. And why you don't want your friend to know. Miller's not coming back to Alabama in any case. He's going to go to the NBA draft. It's just a matter of whether this hurts his draft stock. There you go. There you go, Kenny. Good to have you with us. Let's see what's going on in the coaching carousel. Texas Tech did name Grant McCasland to be their next basketball coach after Mark Adams was forced to resign. Not forced. He was suspended. I guess he was forced to resign. I mean, they made it sound like his doing, but I personally don't know that. I don't know. It just feels like more, again, what he said shouldn't have been said, but, you just got to be careful what you say today. We know that. So anyway, he'll take over for Mark Adams starting next year. See who else is moving around here. Who's on fire? Whose seat's on fire? Dwayne Killings, we talk about. I'm shocked Albany State hasn't fired Dwayne Killings yet. Wayne Tinkle, a fortunate name. He's in trouble at Oregon State. Mike Hopkins in trouble. Let's look at some of the other guys. Let's see who's moved since we last looked at this list of carousel moves. North Texas has obviously had to find a new coach since Grant McCasland left. And by the way, he did a great job at North Texas. Took him to the NIT this year. Has had him in the NCAA tournament a couple of times. Beat Purdue, I believe, in the first round a couple of years ago. He did a great job. His assistant, Russ Hodge, was promoted to take that job. I think we talked about South Florida hiring Abdur Rahim to replace Brian Gregory, who was fired. Temple hires Adam Fisher to replace Aaron McKee, who is an alumnus there, and also he resigned. Wichita State hires Paul Mills to replace Isaac Brown. We talked about Damon Stoudemire, former NBA star, former Rookie of the Year, great player at Arizona, taking the Georgia Tech job, tough job. Josh Pastner was fired there. Mika Strawberry, who did a wonderful job at Pittsburgh, almost getting them to the Big Ten tournament title. He gets hired by Notre Dame to replace Mike Bray, who resigned. And by the way, Mike Bray has not retired. Mike Bray has resigned. He wants to coach again. He was a candidate for the South Florida job. He was a candidate for some other jobs. He said he'll coach anywhere from the power conferences to NAIA. He just wants to be on the East Coast, somewhere in the Atlantic seaboard. As we know, Adrian Autry replaced a great Jim Boeheim after an illustrious career, 47 years as their coach, 60 years in total at Syracuse for Jim Boeheim. Adrian Autry has some big shoes to fill. New Hampshire still looking to replace their coach. Corey Gibson, will get the job at Austin Peay. Georgia Mason hires Tony Skinn after Kim English left for Providence to replace Ed Cooley, who went to Georgetown. By the way, good hire for Georgetown. If Georgetown wants to restore that legacy, and they really do, they want to restore the luster to that program. And I think Ed Cooley's a good choice for that. He did a great job at Providence, where it's not an easy job. Ryan Odom gets a job at VCU after Mike Rhodes left it for Penn State to replace Mika Strawberry. So this is a whole, round robin. That's why we call it a carousel, right? Texas did rightfully, I think, hire Rodney Terry to be the full-time coach after doing a great job after Chris Beard was fired. We just talked about Grant McCasland. We talked about Ed Cooley. We talked about Kim English. Rick Pitino hired at St. John's, replacing a fired Mike Anderson. Listen, they had to buy Mike Anderson's contract out. St. John's has invested a lot in this move here and paying him, I believe, $7 million. No, what are they paying him? I can't remember. Let me see what's the story say here. I don't think they have it in this. Yeah, they don't have it in this one. He got a 7-year contract, though, and I guarantee it's worth a boatload of money. So a lot wrapped up in that. And Rick Pitino's legacy may rest on this whole thing, right? There's been issues every place he's been, especially Louisville. He's restored the program, the luster to programs like Kentucky. He's won everywhere he went, including BU. Providence, he took to the Final Four. He did a great job at Kentucky, obviously. He did a great job at Louisville. He was really, and he was the head coach, so he was the guy with the oversight, right? But he was not getting hookers for players. He should have been aware that this was happening, but he was really cleared of any wrongdoing there. But where do you go to get your reputation back? Plus, there were some other stories, obviously, on a personal level there with him. Idaho hires Alex Pribble. Where were we? I think we might have had a couple of. That's why I'm moving out of East Greenbush. With any luck. AP didn't like, they did not hire Carlos, but apparently Carlos is happy with Gibson coming in there. I believe he's an alum, and, listen, Austin Peay's had their moments in college basketball. And maybe they will again. We'll see. Listen, don't be surprised. There's no reason to be surprised when any of these smaller conferences, schools start to rise up. You saw this year. It's going to be interesting to see if this was a trend this year or it was just an aberration. I think we're going to see more of this. And I think we'll only see more of this if we're allowed to have these conferences that I've talked about a bunch of times. I don't want to see the Oklahoma States the Mississippi States, the West Virginias with really bad conference records get in just because they played a great power schedule and they're net and they're this and they're that. Stop with the freaking metrics. Look at the eye test and let some of these teams who the big boys won't give a chance to play them. So how are their metrics ever going to meet what theirs are? A chance in this tournament, and you will see continued great play like this. Now, the NCAA is going to see the final numbers as far as viewership and think this is a bad thing. But viewership, I would think, throughout this tournament was probably not that bad. It'd be interesting to see those numbers come out. Oh, what else? Western Kentucky hires Steve Lutz to replace Rick Stansbury, who resigned. Tobin Anderson, as we talked about, with that great job at Fairleigh Dickinson, got the Iona job that Rick Pitino left behind. John Gallagher gets a job at Manhattan. Oh, boy, a lot of coaches. Army hires Kevin Kuick to replace Jimmy Allen. Holy Cross, Dave Paulson. Just looking. California hires Mark Madsen. How does Stanford, who's had some horrible seasons and is looking for a coach, let Mark Madsen get away from them, and make his way to California? California might be one of the toughest Power 5 jobs in the country. Stanford's probably another one. But Mark Madsen, a great player at Stanford, they wanted to move on from their coach, and they didn't. And if they had, they could have brought one of their own home. They're probably going to move on from this guy next year anyway. Anyway, that's about all I care to talk about with coaches. What do you got here? Petco Park put basketball game on. Oh, I see. Switch when the lineup started. Some fans were upset. Well, I get it. They're at a basketball game. How many times is San Diego State going to make it to the final? Get a grip. Not UCA, but the people. Oh, let's see. What do we got going on here? College football. What's going on in college football? I haven't even changed my banner tonight, man. It's been a rough week work-wise. Real work-wise. It's just has been One more day, though. 4-day weekend. Good Friday off, and took Monday off to make it a nice long weekend. And we will enjoy it, I can promise you. Got a lot of stuff to do around this house and start getting things cleaned up and ready for some potentially new moves. So we'll see what's going on. What's going around college football? The assault case against ex-Nebraska coach Mickey Joseph was dismissed. This didn't look very good. There was a felony assault case against, he was the interim coach at Nebraska, and he was going to be considered most likely for the head job that went to Matt Rule. The case was dismissed because the accuser refused to testify. We're starting to see a lot of this. We saw it in the Chris Beard story at Texas, the coach who was fired for allegedly choking his fiance. And listen, this guy was charged with assault by strangulation, suffocation as well, in a domestic disturbance where a home where he and his wife Priscilla lived. I don't know why these cases get dropped. I don't think nothing happened in either one of these cases. I know you're innocent until proven guilty, and I don't want to assume anything, but where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's got to be something going on here. I don't know. Speaking of the Cornhuskers, don't forget next week's interview, I'll be doing it tomorrow, will be with former Cornhusker great Irving Fryer. ESPN 300 wide receiver Mayan Graham commits to join the Buckeyes. Man, the wide receivers just keep coming in waves at West Virginia. Simon Fraser, Canada's only NCAA member, drops their football program. They were playing, what were they playing? They played in the Great Southwest Athletic Conference, which is probably a 1A, I'm thinking. I'm not sure. Alabama lands 2025 offensive line recruit Mason Short. Alabama in the news this week, too, to kind of veer off the path here a little bit. Alabama was in the news this week, or right now, and I'll probably talk a little bit about this at the bottom of the hour with Robert Butler on Sports Scope. Alabama in the news because it turns out, we knew this story that Bill Belichick's upset with Alabama grad Mac Jones, his quarterback, because he went outside of the organization looking for help with their putrid offense because Bill put him in such a bad position to succeed. Turns out we didn't know this story when we heard it break back in January, that the place he went was Alabama, which it's no wonder that, Bill Belichick found out because Bill Belichick and Nick Saban are best of friends. And if he went to Alabama for help, who was running the Alabama offense there, by the way? Bill O'Brien. I'll talk about this, and I'm not going to talk a lot about professional football because this is my college show, but, everybody's raving about Mac Jones still in the Patriot organization, right up to Robert Kraft, except one guy. The guy who put him in such a bad position, in a position that he couldn't possibly succeed last year. You haven't heard me talk that badly about my coach in a while. Quarterback Jaden Davis, 35th overall prospect in 24. He picks Michigan. UCLA hires ex-Navy coach Ken Numatalolo. Long-time Navy coach. I know I didn't get that right. He's been hired as the director of leadership. It's a new position with a NCAA program, and maybe more of these schools should consider director of leadership. And I think that's probably a good hire for them if we're going to have that type of position. Kansas hires Sean Snyder, son of Kansas State legend Bill Snyder, to be a special assistant to head coach Lance Leopold, who they managed to hang on to this year. Right now there's, we won't talk about that. We'll get into some draft stuff here in the next couple of weeks as the draft is quickly approaching us. A lot of wide receivers available. Going to be interesting to see how the quarterbacks go. You hear a lot of different opinions. Probably C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young will be 1 and 2 as far as the number as they go. And Carolina's going to take one of them. But then it's going to be interesting what happens with Will Levis, who did have a great pro day. And Richardson, I don't get the Richardson thing. The kid's a good athlete. He's a great athlete. But really did little at Florida to deserve any kind of consideration to be a first-round draft pick. But here we sit, and he's got a shot to make a lot of money based off of what? The person who filed a complaint realizes they have killed the goose that laid the golden egg, right? It's a good point, Rick. And, it didn't. In Chris Beard's situation, the goose will get a chance to make some more golden eggs because he just signed a big contract with Ole Miss on his way to another top program because this will just be a way station for him. But Joseph's career is probably over. Doesn't have the track record. What else we got going on in college football? Should we take a look at? Some talk about Missouri considering switching conferences again. If you remember, Missouri left the Big 8, I believe at the time, maybe it was the Big 12, to go to the SEC years ago. I'm not sure how long ago it was. I want to say 2010 maybe, during this first big wave of realignment. Now there's talk that they may want to return to the Big 12. So we'll see what happens with that. That's interesting. We're not done with realignment. San Diego State did a great job of putting themselves in a position to join the Pac-12 in my mind. during this basketball tournament. They've got a good football team. So I think it's entirely possible that you could see this team. I'm sorry, this team moved to the Pac-12. Plus, you still got the Pac-12's got to figure out what to do to replace USC and UCLA. They're chasing, some of the same schools to merge with or realign with that the Big 12 is. To me, maybe they should form together a super conference, because those two conferences are going to be hurt the most by what's to come. And they're going to suffer in TV money for sure. Problem is, though, maybe they won't, because, with Apple getting involved now and Prime probably going to get involved, there's going to be more money than ever to go around for these football conferences. And I only hope that, the Pac-12 and some of these leagues out west maybe will get some times where we can actually watch the games. Yeah, we did talk about the Mean Green's coach taking the Texas Tech job. He's done a great job at North Texas State. I was trying to remember where he was before that, where he'd also done a good job. Really good coach, stays in the state of Texas, probably a good choice. I think all the Texas teams have done the right things here. Texas Tech did a good job hiring coach. Lost his name already. What was his name? I can't remember now. Anyway, hiring him to replace Mark Adams, who had to resign because of some inappropriate comments that he made. Again, not sure that rises to the level of having to, fall on my sword. But Mark Adams did, either on his own or he was pushed. Texas did well by hiring Rodney Terry to continue. I don't know why they waited so long to give him the full-time gig, but he certainly deserved it. Getting that team to the Elite Eight under some very trying circumstances for that team this year. So yes, great job there, and a good job by all. Texas A&M's in good hands with Buzz Aldrin. Oh my God, what's Buzz's name? This is what happens when I have bad days at work. My mind just shuts right down. Some talk about, we talked about Will Levis recently. They had a down season at 7-6 Kentucky with one of the better quarterbacks. He's going in the top 10. I still say he's going in the top 10. I still say he'll end up being maybe the best of those four quarterbacks in the NFL. We'll see. But there's a possibility this team will be better with Devin Leary coming in from NC State next year. So Wildcat fans, this isn't the end of the road for your football program. You got one of the best coaches in the country, in my mind, in Mark Stoops. You're going to have a really good quarterback coming in to replace a really good quarterback. But you got to have more talent around him than you had around Will Levis this year. Their running game wasn't good. Their offensive line was putrid. The defense let them down at too many different times. Oh, I said that was Kenny, I guess. That was CA. Sorry about that. Because he was out-coached in the tournament. What are we talking about? Rodney Terry? He was out-coached against Miami, but he did a pretty good job. I'm not sure exactly who we're referring to there, Rick, because I didn't look up and see the comment and see what it was tied to. Sometimes there's a little delay. South Carolina. What's the definition of a good season for South Carolina this year is a question that comes in. Listen, they made great strides last year. Spencer Rattler was playing really good football towards the end. They've done a good job in keeping Shane Beamer there. He's done a really good job in his first couple of years on the job here. This team's not going to compete for an SEC championship, I would doubt. But, 8-4, maybe even 9-3, this team is going to go to a good bowl game. I don't want to get into that. What else? Who's on the hot seat in college football these days? Who would you guys say? And I'll let you guys. Oh, you're talking about, yes, Rick is confirming. He did get out coached. But listen, he took over in a very tough situation, kept that team afloat, playing great basketball for much of the year, ranked in the top 5 for much of the year. He played a really good. It isn't like they played a bad basketball team and he got killed. And he got out coached by a really good coach in Jim Larangara. So, I don't think I'm going to penalize Rodney Terry for that. And by the way, when I say he should have got the full-time gig sooner, he probably should have got it long before that game. Just one man's opinion. Who's going to be on the hot seat first this year? Jimbo Fisher? Jimbo Fisher still is too expensive to buy out. He's not going to be on the hot seat. Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern needs to turn it around. He had some really good seasons. Northwestern's hard to win, and Pat Fitzgerald for a period of time would have a really good team, followed by a couple of bad teams or, yo-yo seasons. But now he's had back-to-back bad seasons, and it's time to get it back together. Butch Jones at Arkansas State, he's a dead man walking. I think Marco Cristobal is probably on the hot seat a little bit at Miami. Not this year. They've got him ranked 4th in his coach's hot seat that I like to follow. But there's no way he's going to get fired in the second season. Just not going to happen. Just too much invested in him. Jeff Bailey at Boston College, definitely in trouble. Brent Venable, again, probably not going to get fired in his second season, but the talent he had at Oklahoma was better than 6-6, guys. This team better leave the SEC or leave for the SEC with a really good season under its belt in the Big 12, like maybe even a Pac-12 championship or Pac-12, a Big 12 championship. Mel Tucker, huge buyout. Another guy who shouldn't be on the hot seat because they probably can't afford to fire him. I know there's big donors at all these teams. We talk about it all the time, but do you think they want to eat, $70, $80 million? No. Billy Napier, second year. How many of these second and third year coaches, especially second year coaches, Marco Cristobal, Venable, Napier, all at big schools are in trouble. Tom Allen in Indiana had a great year during the COVID season and hasn't had done much since. He's on the hot seat. Greg Schiano, the second run at Rutgers has not gone on. He better get it together. Listen, they had a really good run the first time, but they weren't playing in the Big Ten. Rutgers needs to get out of the Big Ten. They need to play in the American Football the American Conference, American Athletic Conference. I get it right eventually. Who else? Terry Bowden's still coaching. Did you know that? Terry Bowden, Bobby Bowden's son, had a pretty good run for a few years at Auburn. He's been at L.A. Monroe for a while now. He's about ready to get fired from there as well. Matt Campbell, who's everybody's golden boy every time a big job opens, but he's had a couple of back-to-back seasons that were not good at Iowa State. Going to need a good season this year. And there's some others. I don't know who you'd put on your Duke. Well, the Duke coach isn't in trouble, that's for sure. I'm not sure where that comes from, but that's fine. Help Nike sell shoes more than win championships. What's that got to do with what we're talking about here, Carlos? I don't understand the comment. What are you talking about? Every school in NCAA football, NCAA basketball has sold their souls to shoe companies for decades. And one thing doesn't, how does one thing lead to another? And you're the one who thinks the NIL is good and all this, money free flowing in college sports is fine. So I'm not sure how you change your colors here now. I'm just a little confused. Let's jump over, and we can come back, but I'm going to jump over and do a little college baseball. Tough loss for our favorite Wake Forest. Our favorite baseball team actually right now is Wake Forest because of Larry Sorensen being the color commentator there. Let me change my banner so people don't think I'm talking about basketball or football. Boy, don't I have a college baseball thing? Maybe I don't. Thought I did. There we go. College baseball chatter. How about that? Elon takes down number 2 Wake Forest for the first time in 11 years. Little Elon College. So good job for them knocking off the number 2 Demon Deacons. Number 2 in a recent poll that I have here. And we'll go through this top 25 right now real quickly as we're getting close. We're getting closer and closer now to some of the regional play. We'll get the conference tournaments and we'll get the regional play in the college baseball World Series. But LSU continues to be number 1 at 24-4. Wake Forest, as I said, is number 2 with 26-3. Florida stays number 3. The top 4 teams are the same. Vanderbilt's number 4. Arkansas is up to 5 from number 6, playing really good baseball. South Carolina, no surprise, comes up 3 spots to number 6. Virginia falls a couple of spots to 7. Stanford, 18-7 only. One of the worst records here in the top 10, or the worst record in the top 10. Falls to number 8 from number 7. Boston College is number 9. Kentucky, number 10 at 25-3, by the way. Tennessee is 11. East Carolina, that's your normal baseball power, is now 12. North Carolina, 13. Campbell, true for the little guys. Campbell College, 22-4. They're number 14. Florida Gulf Coast, another small school in Florida, 23-5. They're number 15. Oklahoma State at number 16. Coastal Carolina. Baseball's getting a lot more of these smaller mid-majors playing good baseball. They're going to have a chance to get to Oklahoma City, I would say. Coastal Carolina comes in at number 17. Louisville, number 18. Connecticut, number 19. Miami, number 20. Texas, perennial powers here. Texas and Miami, 20-21. Texas Tech, 22. UCLA, 23. West Virginia and Oregon rounded out at 24-25. What's going on in college baseball since we started the tournament? I don't know because I lost my where'd it go? Well, I had some stories here to chat about, and now I lost them. There they are. What have we missed since college baseball during March Madness?
Okay. Marriott Bonvoy has 30 hotel brands.
Who gives me that? Who gives me that? I brought up college baseball. What the hell? There we go. We had some good series between LSU and Tennessee, as we talked about, I think, last weekend. They played a 3-game series, and LSU won the first 2 games of the series, and then Tennessee came back to win the last game of that, scoring 10 runs in the first 2 innings. They beat the Tigers 14-7 in that last game. So 2 of the top teams in the country there. A first female player, Kenny Gifford, wake up. First female player takes the field for an NCAA team. Olivia Pichardo from Brown became the first woman to play in a D1 baseball game. She pinch hit in a game against Bryant. So there's some history for you. Let me watch the video here. I'll tell you whether she's any good. She pinched hit. I'm going to watch. It's only 10 seconds long. And we're not going to see anything except her getting up the bat. So I guess that was not worth my taking a look at. Columbia rallies from down 12-0. 12-0 to beat number 19 UConn, 19-14. This stuff all happened in the recent weeks during March Madness. Entering the early days of April, there have been 8,400 plus home runs hit in D1 baseball. So the balls are flying out of the parks like never before. You know, juiced up baseballs and metal bats, you know, not a good combination for keeping the ball in the ballpark. I think, if I'm not mistaken, too, walks are also on a record rate in the NCAA as well. So something that maybe the NCAA needs to keep an eye on. We don't need to watch that. So there's a couple of interesting stories that have popped up during that we might have missed during March Madness. What else happened? What else can we look at here? I found this neat little site that gives us some stories. Who's got a comment here? I don't think we have time for that rabbit hole. The restructuring of sports financial responsibilities. No, that's a no. Who's got time for that? I don't have time for that the rest of my lifetime, CA. Won't get into any of this. LSU remains number one, as we said. You know, it's funny. I can't find any place that really gives like the conference rankings. I got to find a place that does that. But we're getting closer and closer to tournament time in NCAA baseball, and we'll keep an eye on that. And we're going to get Larry Sorensen on to talk a little bit about Wake Forest this season. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe we'll do that next week because, we'll probably shorten these shows. I'm considering anyway, shorten these shows to an hour during the kind of the off season, if you will. So we'll still have some basketball and football, and we'll have some baseball to talk about. But we don't have games to talk about, and we can go longer if we need to. But I probably am not going to go the full 90 minutes during the summer months, if you will, until baseball. Or at least until football, I should say, kicks up in high gear late in August. We'll talk more, and we'll talk about whatever you guys want. College baseball, golf, tennis, track and field, chess, and fraternity sports news. By the way, CA, I almost put a wager. Go to DraftKings. I want you to do this. I got some bets in. I got some future bets in on the Masters. But I did find I can bet darts on the Premier League in darts. And I want you to give me a bet. Go to DraftKings. I don't know if you have it. And if you can't get into it, you can. I want to pick. I want to bet. I want to bet something in darts. I just put a $5 bet on something. Let me see if I can find it. Because you probably don't. If you have DraftKings, let me know, and then I won't do this. But you can just give me a winner. Before we wrap it up tonight, I want to get a draft. I want to get a darts pick from CA. If you guys have any other comments you want to talk about anything with college sports before we wrap it up tonight, please do. I see we're losing viewers rapidly as I start talking about dart picks. But stay with me. I know you're here, CA. Don't go away. God, where is it? Maybe it was only last weekend that it was available. Hold on. Maybe I got to go down here. Cycling, football, golf. I must be a degenerate, man, if I'm going to bet darts. Rugby. I know it's here somewhere. Snooker. We can bet snooker. Tennis. There must be nothing going on in darts. Rugby. I thought it was here. Damn it. I was all excited to do this, CA, and here it is, the Premier League. Michael, you know any of these guys? Michael Van Gerwen, against Chris Doobie. These games are all tomorrow. These matches are all tomorrow. Nathan Aspinall against Johnny Clayton. This is a long name. Dimitri Van Denberg against Gerwin Price. And Peter Wright against Michael Smith. You want to give me a pick? Feel free to put it up, CA. I'm ready to do it. Guys, some stuff coming up. We'll follow all the college sports as best we can. As I said, we may shorten the show to an hour during the the less than peak season, if you will. Not to shortchange baseball, but it's hard to talk about baseball for an hour and a half. When there's football news and stories to talk about, we'll certainly talk about them as long as we have to. So we'll certainly dive into all of that. Oh, by the way, before I wrap it up, college basketball, I failed to mention this. Jim Nantz, after 30 years, is done with calling the NCAA tournament. He's not retiring. He's still going to do the Masters. He wants to do the Masters till 2035 when he'll be, I think, 80, and he'll have 50 years doing the Masters. Jim Nantz, I think, still one of the best one of the best sports casters in the world. He's going to keep doing football. He's going to keep doing golf, but he's done doing the NCAA tournament. And I want to say thank you, Jim Nantz. You went out with class the other night. You've done a great job being in our living rooms during March Madness since 1985-ish. So thank you, Jim Nantz, and we wish you continued success in your future endeavors. So I didn't get a chance to say that, and I wanted to make sure that I did. So thank you very much, Jim Nantz. And guys, that's going to be it, CA. I'm waiting for your darts pick. Put it up here. I'll catch it later. Guys, Keith Engle for TGI Sports Talk. Sports Huddle, College Sports Huddle, and we hope you enjoy your college football season's done. Basketball season's done. We're going to follow the off seasons of both, and we're also going to talk some college baseball in the coming weeks. We may have a few weeks we have to take off for some personal reasons, but we'll talk about that as we go forward. All good stuff. Guys, enjoy. Have a great Wednesday night, and we'll see you Friday morning with Are You Serious with the Mad New Yorker. We'll see you Sunday with the with the Sunday Stream of Consciousness on Easter Sunday. And watch tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, my interview with Chuck Foreman, former Viking great, former Hurricane great Chuck Foreman. It was a very interesting interview. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.